Warren Beatty and Joan Collins. Two of Hollywood's most dazzling, scandalous, and talked about figures of their time. Their relationship was the stuff of legend, filled with passion, obsession, and, if you believe Collins' own words, a level of exhaustion that nearly broke her. But what if I told you that the real shocker wasn't Beatty's relentless energy? That Joan Collins, Hollywood's most glamorous diva, held on to a dark secret for decades, one that, when finally revealed in her memoir, made even her most devoted fans see her in a different light. Stay with me as we unravel the truth behind Joan Collins, the woman who had it all, but still wanted more. The Warren Beatty era, a love affair of excess. Joan Collins was already a rising star in the 1950s when she met Warren Beatty, a young, ambitious actor who had yet to become the Hollywood legend we know today. But even back then, Beatty had a reputation, one that Collins would later confirm in her memoir. According to her, their relationship was intense, passionate, overwhelming. She once claimed that Beatty was so insatiable that he could go multiple times a day, leaving her absolutely exhausted. But while the media obsessed over their bedroom antics, there was a much darker side to their story, one that Collins kept hidden for years. Because while Beatty was busy building his career and indulging in his well-known affairs, Joan was faced with a devastating decision. The secret that changed everything. Collins became pregnant with Beatty's child. And in that era, long before the days of open conversations about women's rights and reproductive choices, this was a scandal that could have ended her career before it even took off. She was young, ambitious, and determined to become a star. And, in a moment that she would later describe with painful honesty, she made a decision that haunted her for the rest of her life. She had an abortion. Not only that, she later admitted that it was Beatty who had pushed for it. She was devastated, but he was adamant. He was too young, too focused on his career, and in no way ready to become a father. It was a defining moment in Collins' life. And when she finally spoke about it years later, she made it clear that she regretted it deeply. "I should have said no," she confessed. "I should have had that baby." And in that one revelation, the world saw a different side of Joan Collins, not the spoiled, glamorous star, but a woman who had lived with a painful, irreversible decision for decades. But let's not forget, Joan Collins wasn't just another Hollywood starlet. She was Joan Collins. She knew how to play the game better than anyone. And while the world often saw her as a spoiled diva who lived in luxury, she was also a survivor. Her career went through highs and lows, but she always found a way to stay relevant. She was the queen of reinvention, from the seductive starlet of the 50s to the TV icon of Dynasty in the 80s. She married 5 times. She fought for every role she ever got, and she never let anyone, whether it was Warren Beatty or the Hollywood executives, dictate her fate. And yet, despite all her success, despite her larger-than-life persona, Joan Collins still carried that regret. She may have been spoiled. She may have lived a life of luxury. But she was also a woman who had made difficult choices, and one of them left a mark on her that no amount of fame could erase. The legacy of Hollywood's most spoiled star. Joan Collins has been called a diva, a seductress, and yes, the most spoiled star in Hollywood. But is that really the full story? She was glamorous, yes. She was ruthless when it came to her career. But beneath the diamonds and designer gowns was a woman who had experienced pain, regret, and sacrifice. And maybe that's why people still talk about her today. Because Joan Collins wasn't just another Hollywood star, she was an enigma. A woman who wanted everything, but knew that sometimes, the price of fame was higher than anyone could ever imagine. Joan Collins, Hollywood's most spoiled star and the secret she couldn't hide. She had the beauty of a goddess, the confidence of a queen, and the ambition of a warrior. Joan Collins wasn't just a Hollywood star, she was Hollywood royalty. But behind the glitz and glamour, behind the diamonds and designer gowns, there was a secret that haunted her. A decision that shaped her life. For decades, Joan Collins was called spoiled, selfish, and scandalous. But when she finally spoke about the choice she made in her youth, the world saw her in a completely different light. This is the shocking truth about Joan Collins, the woman who had everything but still carried a regret that never left her. It was the late 1950s, and Joan Collins was the talk of Hollywood. Studios saw her as the next Elizabeth Taylor, a woman whose beauty could set the silver screen on fire. But in her personal life, something very different was happening. She had fallen madly, obsessively in love with Warren Beatty. And let's be clear, Beatty wasn't yet the Hollywood legend he would become. At the time, he was just an ambitious young actor, still fighting to make a name for himself. Yet even then, his reputation with women was legendary. Collins would later describe their relationship as passionate, exciting, and completely exhausting. According to her, Beatty was insatiable, sometimes making love multiple times a day. And yet, despite all the passion, there was something else lurking beneath the surface. Something much darker. Because while their romance was setting Hollywood ablaze, behind closed doors, Joan was dealing with something far more serious. A heartbreaking decision. She was young. She was in love. And suddenly, she was pregnant. Now, remember, this was the 1950s. There were no open discussions about women's choices, no social safety nets, and certainly no sympathy from Hollywood executives. Joan Collins was at a crossroads. She had just started building her career, and a baby, especially with a struggling actor like Beatty, could destroy everything. Beatty made it clear, he wasn't ready to be a father. He was too young. Too focused on his future. Too desperate to become famous. And so, Collins made a choice. She had an abortion. It was a moment that changed her life forever. And in her later years, she admitted something shocking. She regretted it. I should have said no, she confessed in her memoir. I should have had that baby. For decades, she had been called selfish, vain, and spoiled. But in that one confession, the world saw a different Joan Collins, a woman who had sacrificed something she could never get back. And while she moved forward, that pain never fully left her. If you think Joan Collins crumbled after that moment, think again. She didn't just survive, she thrived. She went on to star in some of the biggest films and TV shows of the century. She built a career that lasted decades, outlasting many of her contemporaries. She married 5 times, each relationship bringing new scandals and new headlines. She fought for every role, never allowing herself to become irrelevant. And then came Dynasty. The 1980s Dynasty era was Joan Collins at her most powerful. She became the ultimate TV villain, Alexis Carrington, a woman who redefined what it meant to be a badass. She was glamorous. She was ruthless. And she was making millions. But despite all her success, despite all the diamonds and the luxury, one thing never changed, her regret. She had everything. But she still wished she had that child. Was Joan Collins really Hollywood's most spoiled star? People have called Joan Collins many things. A diva. A seductress. A scandalous woman who thrived on fame and fortune. But is that really the full story, or was she simply a woman trying to survive in an industry that devoured women? Joan Collins never apologized for who she was. She never played the victim. And she never let Hollywood break her. But deep down, she was still haunted by the decision she made all those years ago. And maybe that's what makes her story so unforgettable. Because no matter how glamorous, no matter how successful, Joan Collins was still a woman who lived with the consequences of a choice she could never take back. So, was Joan Collins really Hollywood's most spoiled star? Or was she just a woman who made tough choices in a brutal industry? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you love uncovering Hollywood's deepest secrets, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Because trust me, there are so many more stories like this waiting to be told. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and remember, Hollywood's biggest legends are always more complicated than they seem.